Now for the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Member, Mr. Norton.
Mr. Speaker, members of this National Assembly, first of all, permit me to thank the opposition members of Parliament for electing me Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, it is not parliamentary language for you to say somebody is telling a lie. But clearly, the Honorable Attorney General is in a different corner to truth. The truth of the matter is protests of 1997. I noticed the Honorable Joe Hamilton, who participated with us in the PNC, he can tell you that we organized and we brought pressure to bear to the PPP, and as a result of the Hermanston Accord, the changes that occurred. They are not as a result of the People's Progressive Party. They were, you didn't say under, you did not say under the PPP, you said they were made by the PPP. And I'm saying to you, without fear of successful contradiction, that it is political. Mr. Speaker, you need to insulate me from, I'm seeing in the corner there, somebody like their own Lipton tea factory. A Lipton of lip. I think it is unnecessary. So, I mean, the lip can affect you. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I'm saying it is as a result of political action that we got the constitutional reform that occurred. And it involved the political parties in the National Assembly. And so it is not correct to say what you would have said. Mr. Speaker, the argument seems to be that is being averred here by the government side. The argument seems to be that there isn't equal or adequate representation. Mr. Speaker, the information before me suggests that this committee has 4 people from the APNU AFC and 5 from the People's Progressive Party. That suggests to me that there is representation. And so if you come here to argue about representation, clearly you are fooling yourself because you are represented. The problem is, however, Mr. Speaker, you are seeking to use the indiscipline of your members of Parliament to force a change. What you need to do is discipline your members of Parliament so they go to the Public Accounts Committee and so they will be there. What you are putting in place here, Mr. Speaker, is a mechanism to ensure when you don't want a meeting, there isn't a meeting. And when you want one, there is one. Your motives are sinister. Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, I listened to the Honorable Attorney General speaking about Quorum. There's a strange name coming from that corner. Yes, Mr. Speaker, as I overcome the names, and I hope you know who names. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Attorney General suggested that this issue is purely about being quorate. Mr. Speaker, there is a context. There is a context. The reforms in this Parliament occurred as a result of the need to democratize this Parliament. I want to read from Sir Davies' report on page 8. It states, steps must be taken to establish the National Assembly as an institution independent of the executive. Mr. Speaker, this is the critical issue. The critical issue is the whole process was intended to ensure the independence of the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, when you put 3 members, what in fact you were doing is seeking to insulate the Public Accounts Committee from government control and domination. That was the intention, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, to speak about a quorum in isolation from the context in which it emerged is disingenuous. Mr. Speaker, the critical issue here is what should constitute a quorum. And if the argument is, Mr. Speaker, that we have to insulate the committee from the executive, then it is logical that the quorum of 3 is not only superior, it is a reflection of the fact that you want to stop government interference and allow the Public Accounts Committee to function and function properly. That is the critical issue here. And Mr. Speaker, had we put Guyana first, we would have arrived at a different conclusion. We would have arrived at a different conclusion. Mr. Speaker, I submit that there is a problem. I submit that there is a problem. And let me tell you what is the problem. The problem is, Mr. Speaker, there will be change of government in countries. And what happens is this. A time comes when a government might end up in opposition, as would have happened, and then they are made to scrutinize their own accounts. Therefore, what we need to do, Mr. Speaker, is to look at that and make changes. I want to suggest that this be withdrawn so that careful attention could be given to dealing with this anomaly, because that is the real issue. And if we can come up with proposals to ensure a government doesn't scrutinize itself, it should help to solve the problem. But the solution to the problem cannot be bringing government reps there when it will damage the intention of the Public Accounts Committee. The purpose of the Public Accounts Committee is to scrutinize the accounts and to ensure that the executive is held accountable and does not dominate the committee. But Mr. Speaker, for you to do that, you first must believe in the rule of law. You must first believe that the law is paramount and should determine. Mr. Speaker, in the 1990s in this House, we fought to get the Prime Minister to be what the Constitution says, the head of government business in the House. It took years before we got through. Mr. Speaker, I want to read from the Guyana Constitution. It is Article 102.2. Listen what it says. It says, if he or she is not otherwise the holder of an office of Vice President, the person holding the office of Prime Minister shall, not may, shall, by virtue of holding that office, be a Vice President. And he or she shall have precedence over any other Vice President. When I came in here today and I saw a Prime Minister, Vice President, there are no Prime Minister and Vice President, I thought this is a serious violation of our Constitution. We can lead the way if you're serious about democracy by rectifying that. Because the Constitution, the law of Guyana is clear that he is Prime Minister and first Vice President. And so, Mr. Speaker, there's no basis for you to speak about the rule of law when you violate the law with impunity. Mr. Speaker, you know, you've been violated a lot, you know. A lot of people violate you in life. He has been so violated, he's obsessed with the word. Enjoy your violation. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Dattadin said more participation, more transparency. It's the most illogical thing I've ever heard in the world. Mr. Speaker, we have to focus on ensuring that the Public Accounts Committee is independent and operates as such. I can buy a male voice for you. You need a male voice. Mr. Speaker, this motion is literally a motion.
Honorable Member, Mr. McCoy, you're shouting in my ear.
Mr. Speaker, this motion is a literal motion. The only difference is that in the other motion, it gets rid of the toxic things. This motion is getting rid of the good things. This motion seeks to remove and reduce the independence of the Public Accounts Committee. This motion is seeking to give the government a mechanism by which it can determine when meetings are held and when they are not held. And the very actions we are talking about are the actions that will definitely stymie the work of the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Speaker, you know, when I listened to the Honorable Member Juan Jill, I remember at Mackenzie High School, I had a teacher who told us when you're debating, the first thing you must do is ensure that what you're saying is consistent. In the one breath, Mr. Edgell said that this institution should be building consensus, that Public Accounts Committee should be building consensus. And in the same breath, he went on to say we had to impose a rule on them. That's a contradiction. But I sense contradictions are too difficult for you to comprehend. Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a general trend. The general trend is this: a trend in the direction of domination and control. This is not a trend towards the development of democracy. This is a trend in the direction of destroying democracy. Clearly, the government is now reneging on its commitment it made years ago to ensure that Parliament develops its independence and progress. If you go to the Davies report, you will see that it stated clearly that one of the things that was affecting the independence of Parliament was the fact that the resources for Parliament were being determined by the minister. And we proceeded to change that, and this government comes and carry it right back there. You have to go to court and get a ruling to say that you're out of place. Mr. Speaker, you are not showing any interest, the government, the PPP, they are not showing any interest in democracy and the rule of law. The things they are doing, they are seeking to destroy democracy. Ask the Honorable Member Dharam Lal. You know why he couldn't answer the question? He couldn't answer the question because he doesn't believe in law. And he knows that his practice of not having those internal elections are anti-democratic, and all they do is to serve to give him domination and control, which he should not have. And so there is no culture. You can't even, if you could have controlled yourself, you wouldn't be so public on social media. If you could have controlled yourself, you would have not just been as public on social media. Anyhow, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we have got to recommit to democracy. We have got to recommit to democracy. Democracy presupposes the involvement of people and being responsive to them. Mr. Speaker, in the Davies report, it is well established that there is a place for civil society. I think I need to find it and read it. There's a place for civil society. I want to read what it says. The report says, civil society groups and the private sector have the right to comment on public affairs and on legislation on behalf of those they seek to represent. This is impossible if meetings of the National Assembly are arranged without sufficient notice and bills are rushed through without enough time to consider their provisions, unquote. Mr. Speaker, when the Davies report was written, it was established that civil society was essentially excluded. And all that was done was there to involve civil society. Yet we have a vice president, one of the two vice presidents, telling us that because they didn't go to an election, they have no place. If you are talking about democracy, then civil society must have a place in that society. And so, my friends, I ask you to reconsider your position, because your position is not only rolling back democracy, it is damaging our country. I listened to Honorable Member Nandalal, and all he was saying essentially to the end is, y'all have your say and I will have my way. Now, you cannot build a democracy. You cannot build a democracy if you are not responsive to the interests of people. Mr. Speaker, your life is a rigged life. Mr. Speaker, I will urge, Mr. Speaker, that you utilize the standing orders when there is this level of insanity. Mr. Speaker, our parliament should have a level of decency, and therefore it is your task to get rid of the indecent, Mr. Speaker. And I plead with you, I have no problem, I'm pleading with you, you should be impartial and utilize the rules effectively. Mr. Speaker, the issue before us is whether, Mr. Speaker, is whether adding two persons or the government side to form a quorum for the Public Accounts Committee will solve the problem. It cannot. I want to repeat that when you look at it, it shows no interest, it shows no intention of bringing representation, because representation already exists. And therefore, there is a sinister motive. And I said to you, we need to ensure that the Public Accounts Committee continues to operate as an independent body, and it should be so structured that a minister or two from government staying away should not affect its work. If you are committed to building a democratic society in which Parliament is independent, in which the Public Accounts Committee is insulated from the executive, you will withdraw this motion. I close by saying to you, Mr. Speaker, I close by saying to you that you are destroying the democratic process. The gains that you refer to that were made in the period 1997 to 2006, your actions today are destroying that process. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister to share.